What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review The Killer, the latest thriller by director David Fincher, starring Michael Fassbender. The movie's playing theatrically right now, and it'll be coming to Netflix on November 10th. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything in this video. However, anything and everything from the two trailers that have been released so far, I consider all those details to be fair game for discussion. But I should also acknowledge something before I go any further. I'm absolutely sick as a dog right now. I don't know what the world record is for vomiting in a 24-hour period, but I definitely established a new personal best yesterday. And not to go into too many details, but imagine a fire hose blasting from both ends simultaneously. It was a pretty miserable experience, but I've transitioned now to the phase where I'm just kind of like sweating and a little feverish and a little delirious. So I have no idea how this video is going to turn out. I'm still a little fuzzy. But the idea of missing a David Fincher movie or missing the opportunity to review a David Fincher movie in a timely fashion, well, I cannot accept that. So we're going to do the best that we can. And who knows, I might wake up tomorrow and be like, oh my God, why did you record that video? But luckily, my love and affection for the work of David Fincher is such that we're just going to power through. But I'm glad that I kicked my butt out of bed and dragged myself to the theater to see this flick, because as it turns out, it's pretty damn cool, and this will come as a surprise to no one that's been following David Fincher's career. Like for the last 30 years, he's been consistently delivering really slick, stylish genre entertainment, oftentimes in the thriller genre. And I guess it depends upon what kind of David Fincher fan you are. Like, what do you associate him with? I mean, for a lot of people, they probably think, oh, David Fincher, he's the guy who did all those Madonna videos back in the early 90s, like Vogue. I mean, Vogue was an absolutely iconic music video for that period. And then there are other people that are going to say, no, he's the guy who directed The Social Network, one of the best movies of the 21st century. And there's nothing about The Social Network that is any common ground with the thriller genre. And while I might regard that as his best film that he's ever made, it's his thrillers where you really get to see his signature style at play. And along those lines, I'm talking about movies like Seven or Zodiac or Gone Girl or some of the best episodes of Mindhunter, like when he really goes into the thriller genre. Or even movies like Panic Room. I guess Fight Club's not really a thriller, although I guess it's a kind of thriller adjacent, but he's one of those directors that seems physically incapable of not shooting his movies in the most beautiful fashion possible, but it's beautiful in a very specific way. Like there's an edge to it, there's an intensity, it's almost kind of terrifying. And then when he finds a story that he likes and really cuts loose, holy crap, I don't know if there's another director in America right now that can beat him when it comes to delivering really strong thrillers. Maybe the Coen brothers. I feel like they also know how to deliver incredible genre entertainment with the most stunning visuals imaginable. But I should mention that one of the writers on The Killer is Andrew Kevin Walker, who actually wrote Seven. And Andrew Kevin Walker is not the only writer on this movie. There's also Alexis Nolent and Luc Jacquemin. But I should also emphasize that The Killer and Seven have very little in common. That's what's really cool about David Fincher and his approach to the thriller genre, is how he tackles so many different kinds of stories within the thriller genre. They're like subtle variations in style and approach depending upon the story that's being told. Like Zodiac definitely has its own flavor, its own approach versus a movie like Seven or Gone Girl. Although you can always recognize like the David Fincher fingerprints on the story. But what's interesting is how sometimes you'll see a director like Tim Burton where they fall back on their kind of signature style so frequently it starts to feel stale, and like they're kind of locked in amber, almost kind of trapped within, I don't know, their whole approach to storytelling, to the point where like you don't even want to watch their movies anymore. Whereas David Fincher, I'm always excited to see what he might be bringing us next. And with this movie, it almost feels like David Fincher spent a year obsessively watching the movies of Jean-Pierre Melville. And if you've never heard of Jean-Pierre Melville, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, he was the absolute master of French noir. Movies like Bob Le Flambour or Les Doulos or Les Samurai. These are some of the most killer crime films ever made. But they have a very restrained, almost kind of like stripped bare style that's incredibly elegant and sophisticated. The movies are absolutely fascinating and like demand multiple reviewings. But the way they approached the character of Michael Fassbender's character in this movie was very reminiscent of Les Samurai. And you could almost argue that this movie is just a really powerful character study, because we spend the entire movie inside of his head, hearing about his approach to his work, hearing about his philosophy. And if you have not yet seen the trailer to the movie, Michael Fassbender plays an assassin for hire. He plays a killer for hire, and he's really good at what he does. And the whole premise of the movie is, in spite of all of his kind of like meticulous and rigorous preparations for like whatever task might be in front of him, a job goes wrong, The client resents it. The client tries to clean up loose ends, and Michael Fassbender's put in a position where he's going to have to go out and get some revenge, some payback. And the movie unfolds in almost novelistic fashion with different chapters as he hunts down the various people involved with the, I guess, like the fallout or the consequences from this job that went horribly wrong. And what's cool about this approach is how every time he travels to a new city or he's hunting down a different target, we get to see him go through his kind of his preparation or his process over and over and over again. And we see how he lives an almost monk-like existence with no distractions whatsoever. And I don't think I've ever given this compliment to a movie ever in my life before, but after watching this movie, you're going to want to go home and clean up your room. And what do I mean by that? He's so organized and he's so prepared, and he has so many incredible like safe houses and alternate identities kind of prepared around the world, and he has so many supplies kind of tucked away. When you see like how he's got his weapons arrayed and his passports arrayed and all that sort of like oh my god, like my room's just a mess. I need to go home and just get more organized. He is completely, totally devoted to his craft. It's an incredibly physical performance. He's always doing yoga or training, and just watching Michael Fassbender move is an absolute pleasure. He's definitely one of the best physical actors out there, but also Michael Fassbender, he just has that brooding intensity where he can be incredibly still and be incredibly fascinating all at once. And there are not a lot of actors that can do that, where they can just hang out motionless, looking at a window like with like a sniper rifle for days on end, where the camera's just chilling on their face and you can't take your eyes off of them. And I just feel like, yeah, Michael Fassbender and David Fincher, they make an incredible team. But as I talk about the movie and think about the movie, I'm realizing not only are people going to draw comparisons between this film and the movies of Jean-Pierre Melville, they're probably also going to draw comparisons to No Country for Old Men. And Cormac McCarthy and the Coen brothers made an incredible team on that particular movie. But there's one scene in particular in that movie which I feel like kind of sums up the whole style and flavor and approach that you will see in The Killer. There's a scene in No Country for Old Men where Woody Harrelson comes back to his hotel, and Javier Bardem's character, Anton Chigurh, just follows him up the stairs, goes up to his hotel room, and kills him, and they have a little conversation about how fucking crazy Chigurh is. But it's a very grounded, very stripped away, like almost a kind of threadbare scene where there's no fat on the bone whatsoever. It's just lean and mean as hell. So like that entire scene, if you were to like basically make an entire feature film out of that flavor, that atmosphere, that style, you'd be getting close to the atmosphere of The Killer. But another aspect of the movie that I really enjoyed was watching how with each new city and with each new target, Michael Fassbender, one of the first things he does in every new environment, he always goes to the hardware store to pick up a like really odd, unusual supplies. You're like, wait a second, like what's he gonna need that for? Why does he need all that hamburger meat? But then as he kind of puts his plans into motion, like, oh, I get it now. Like I see there's a method to your madness. And there's just something incredibly thrilling about watching a character who is completely, totally obsessive and dedicated to his craft and really good at his craft, but admittedly, one who also makes mistakes. I mean, the whole reason this movie even takes place or the story unfolds is because he makes a mistake at the beginning of the movie, and that mistake sets in motion a domino effect or a chain reaction of all these horrible consequences. But because this movie is about a killer for hire, inevitably, violence does ensue. And let's just say there are very few directors left on the planet who know how to shoot violence as effectively and as beautifully and as fascinating a fashion as David Fincher. I mean, one of the most, I guess, iconic shots of the last 15 years is that scene in Gone Girl where Rosamund Pike slashes Doogie Howser's throat and the blood goes all over. I mean, it's just absolutely stunning and shocking, but also strangely beautiful. When you see a beautiful woman like Rosamund Pike covered in blood like that, like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything quite like that, but it is visually arresting. You just can't take your eyes off of it. And I think a lot of David Fincher's fans are going to be absolutely delighted by the explosive, beautiful, bloody mayhem that erupts from time to time throughout this flick. And as far as music goes, it should come as no surprise to anyone who's been following David Fincher's movies. There's some music by Trent Reznor in here, and I think Trent Reznor, Jesus Christ, like going back to just like that opening credit sequence to Seven back in the 90s, like the combination of Trent Reznor's music and David Fincher's visuals, it's just that incredible 1-2 punch. Or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the opening credit sequence of that was absolutely astonishing. I should also mention the opening credit sequence to this movie, one of the best that I've seen in years. I think David Fincher recognizes that a title sequence is an opportunity. It's an additional scene where you might possibly have an impact on the audience, and I feel like he never lets a title sequence go to waste. And alongside Trent Reznor, I should also mention Atticus Ross. They seem to work as a team more often than not, at least when it comes to the work of David Fincher. And they've teamed up on many of his movies over the years. But music plays a huge role in the movie because one of the ways that the killer is able to kind of keep the outside world at bay and like prevent it from distracting him, he's always listening to music while he's performing certain jobs or certain tasks. And he has a love and affection for the music of the Smiths. So I don't know what people think about the Smiths, but if you like the Smiths, you're going to be absolutely delighted by this movie. And if you don't like the Smiths, who knows? This movie might bring you around. One last compliment, though, before I get to my one main criticism. The ensemble cast of this flick is pretty goddamn cool because just due to the nature of the movie and the way that it's structured, every chapter gives the movie an opportunity to present a new recognizable face that can bring something new to the movie. And Charles Parnell is absolutely incredible in this. Tilda Swinton is absolutely incredible in this. And what's great about their characters is how they all represent different roles within this very corrupt, bloody, very profitable society. Like Fassbender plays the killer. Tilda Swinton plays the expert. Charles Parnell plays the lawyer. Arliss Howard, the client. And we even have one character here, Monique Ganderton, who plays the dominatrix. But I love how everybody just has like the role they play or like the service they provide. But overall, this is a very grim, merciless world where they're constantly reminding you about how any sort of sentimental affection for people or any sort of empathy, that is a great way to get your ass killed. I mean, chances are you're going to get killed no matter what because this is a very violent world that's being explored in this story. But I guess I've been talking quite a bit at this point with doing nothing but shower this movie with praise, but I do have one major criticism, which basically took this movie from being like an A down to just like a really solid B. The ending, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I found the ending to be incredibly disappointing. Like the whole movie is building toward this incredible climax, and then for me, once again, without offering any sort of specifics, it all just kind of dissolves into the ether. And who knows, maybe because I'm feverish and ill and all fucked up, maybe I wasn't able to appreciate what they were going for, but it ended so abruptly. I was just like, wait a second, like that's it? Like that's the ending? Because it had been so good and so astonishing up to the point. Like there's one, about halfway through I realized I needed to go to the bathroom and I was like, it's going to be like physically painful for me to pull myself away from the story, even for like 30 seconds to sprint to the bathroom and back. I was that invested, that engaged. But the ending, oh my God, it's almost like the writers just said like, you know what, fuck it, we've gotten bored with the story, I guess we're done here, and they just moved on. I was shocked and amazed that the movie would just kind of drop the ball like that. But I will, when this movie comes out on Netflix, I will rewatch it and reassess my feelings about the ending, because I feel like anytime you watch a movie when you're sick, your initial emotional response can be called into question. And as far as how this movie compares to the rest of David Fincher's filmography is concerned, like I would love to do a top 10 David Fincher video or like an every film ranked. It's kind of hard to know like which projects make the cut and which ones don't, because he's done so many things like Love, Death, and Robots and so many music videos and so many short films. They're obviously like, incredible pieces of work, but like, should they be in a ranking of his best movies? And I guess I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But as I mentioned before, I think The Social Network is his best movie. I probably regard The Curious Case of Benjamin Button as the worst, or at a minimum, my least favorite. I mean, frankly, I kind of fucking hate that movie. And it also shows the dangers of how poorly a movie will age when you overly rely upon digital effects, because digital effects, they get outdated so quickly. And they start to seem so old-fashioned. I feel like if you can capture effects in camera, that's always going to work to your advantage. Like look at like Max von Sydow and The Exorcist, like the way they made him look old in that movie. He still looks old all these years later. Whereas if they had altered him digitally, it would have looked. Digital didn't even exist then, but it would have looked ridiculous. Curious Case of Benjamin Button. It's got a lot of really clunky effects, but I also just don't like the story. I don't like anything about it. I don't really like the game, but the rest of his movies I pretty much like, and it's hard to rank them. Like I would definitely rank Zodiac near the top. I would definitely rank Seven near the top. But in the middle, you have all these movies like Panic Room, Alien 3, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Mank, Gone Girl. He's got a lot of really solid to great work out there. So I guess if you're a young film enthusiast and you're just getting to his work, like the good news is you've got this giant body of work to enjoy. And also, like I said before, his music videos from the early 90s are incredible. The music video for Vogue is just an all-time classic. And I don't even really like Madonna, but that fucking video is a goddamn banger. But I would place The Killer in that middle cluster of movies. Movies like Gone Girl, movies like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, movies that are really good, but not like his all-time classics. I think his best movies will probably always be Fight Club, Zodiac, The Social Network, but who knows? He could very easily deliver some truly groundbreaking work in the years to come. I feel like he's one of those people that is just, like the character in this movie, completely, totally obsessed with his craft, always has been, always will be. And I always find his insights into film history fascinating. Like the documentary Hitchcock Truffaut, there are a bunch of sequences in there where David Fincher's talking about what he learned from watching Alfred Hitchcock movies. And I would probably say that Brian De Palma is probably the more obvious disciple of Alfred Hitchcock. But I feel like you can see a little bit of Hitchcock in David Fincher as well, where it's just that devotion to creating the most beautiful, stylish, just elegant movie possible, even when he's being absolutely ruthless and brutal. There's just a stunning allure to everything that David Fincher does with the camera. So I will always keep coming back to watch whatever he's working on. And it's just been an absolute delight following his career over the last 30 years. And as long as he keeps working, I'll keep showing up. But I think at this point, I'm ready to wrap up this video. I need to edit the sucker, and then I'm going to fucking bed. I'm getting completely, totally tongue-tied and twisted. I've never done a video before where I'm constantly feeling compelled to like close my eyes while I'm talking, but anyway, I'm a mess and I apologize. I hope some of this made sense. If so, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and I'll probably come back at y'all next week sometime with some more David Fincher content, because I do really want to, return to his work and do the deep dive and do a proper ranking of his filmography. But thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.